We're back with Peter Chexfield, and let's talk about the swinging blue jeans, and that's the topic of your latest book, Swinging Blue Jeans. They weren't as big in the States, obviously, but tell me
No.
about them. What made them what they are? Give me a little background on them.
Like a lot of artists, they started in skiffle, but whereas people like the Beatles and others, they quickly moved to rock and roll, within a year or two. It took a long time for the swinging blue jeans to do that, and they kept going as a sort of skiffle stroke trad jazz band, but with guitars for about 4 or 5 years, and they was very popular. I mean, they played the Cavern more times than any other group. About 100 more times than the Beatles,
Wow.
and and very popular in Liverpool, but despite or because of the kind of music, and they actually they invited the Beatles on a guest night because for a long time they were just called the Blue Jeans at the time, not the Swing Blue Jeans. They'd have their own evenings slot at the Cavern, and up until that time, the Beatles had only done lunch times, for the office workers, and it was the Blue Jeans who invited the Beatles as a guest spot. And so their first evening show at the Cavern was as a guest right down on the bill for the Blue Jeans. So, yeah, they were very popular. But
Right.
then what happened? I'll tell you a little bit more background. Um, what happened? Paul McCartney, they all become friends, and Paul McCartney suggested to the owner of the Star Club, why don't you book the Blue Jeans? And some people said perhaps he did it as a cruel joke because at the time they still had a banjo and an upright bass, and they were still doing sort of trad jazz types. And this would have been in August and September 1962. And they went out there, and I was talking to the lead singer last week. I actually interviewed him by phone, and he's 85 now, not in great health, but good memory. But anyway, he said, basically we were booed off stage, and they said, what are we going to do? And it was booked for something like 6 weeks. So
Right.
what happened? There was other bands there, I believe the Undertakers and King Size Taylor and the Dominoes, and they said, right, borrow our rock and roll instruments. And the banjo player, he was quite versatile. He played piano or organ, and the others picked up electric instruments and everything. And the double bass player, the late Les Braid, he played electric bass. And then overnight, really, literally overnight, they became a beat group. So it wasn't sort of, it wasn't just slow developing with them. I
Well,
mean, they
yeah.
liked rock and roll and they knew a lot of these songs, but they never really played them, and that's when they changed.
And it was probably tough to break into the American market considering all the other British bands that were trying to get into the market. I mean, there was the Dave Clark Five, Jerry and the Pacemakers had made it to some degree. It was on and on and on. And then the Swing and Blue Jeans, although very good, they had it was probably very tough to break through that barrier.
Well, the big problem there was that they actually had a biggish hit. I believe it got into the top 20 in the USA of Hippie Hippie Shake, and
Jan
and
Romero did the original.
yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but the Swing and Blue Jeans version, it was quite a big hit in America. I believe it got into the top 20, about 17 or 18 on Billboard charts. I'm not, I won't swear to that. But anyway, they was invited to do the Ed Sullivan Show, and their manager at the time, a Liverpool club owner named Jim Ireland, he said, no, they can't make it. They're doing a tour of Scandinavia. So they turned down the Ed Sullivan Show to do these little clubs in Scandinavia that had all been pre-booked. And I said to Ray, "Do you regret it?" He said, "Well, we missed the boat, but we had our principles. We didn't want to let people down. So and that's why they never really made it in America. If they'd have been on the Ed Sullivan Show, they may well have been as big as Billy J. Kramer and Jerry and the Pacemakers and other bands like that."
Yeah, yeah. And I guess you have to think a big picture. I mean, look at the audience that they would have had on the Ed Sullivan Show compared to Scandinavia. I mean,
I
yeah,
know, I know, I know. Yeah, yeah, but
sometimes you gotta say, look, I love Scandinavia, but if I get to America, there's millions and
I
millions
agree.
of people.
And perhaps if that was Brian Epstein or a different manager, they would have done that. But this was, apparently a man, with strong principles said, "Oh no, I'm not going to let these people down." And that's what happened. So I think that's part of the reason they never really made it in America.
Mm. I noticed that they on this CD they did a nice version of "Shake and Feeling" in German. They did some songs in different languages too.
Yeah, that's one of their own songs, and yeah, they did that in German. They did a German version of "Good Golly Miss Molly" and a couple of other songs. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they wasn't alone doing foreign language things. As you know, the Beatles did "She Loves You" and "I Want to Hold Your Hand" in German, and some guys like I don't know Cliff Richard or Petula Clark and Sandy Shaw. They did loads of different languages. Yeah,
Oh
so they're
yeah.
very versatile. So yeah.
Petula did what? French, German, English. I think she could even done Spanish for all I know. But
Yeah, and
she did so
Sandy
many.
Shaw the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. So let's run down the original members of the band.
Yeah, well, it was Ray Ennis. He was mostly the lead vocalist. Sometimes he let other people and rhythm guitarist. And then there was Ralph Ellis. He did some lead vocals and played lead guitar. And then there was Les Braid, the bass player, and Norman Colk, the drummer. Great band. And the amazing thing with this book, considering no one's ever written a book on the swinging blue jeans, Les Braid, he died about 20 years ago, but the other three I've spoke or got photos or both to all three of the other surviving members. So this book, I've got the full involvement of the guys. It would be like writing a book on the Beatles, and doing the surviving Beatles kind of thing. I can't believe it. So yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. Now, when will this book be out and what's the official name of it?
It'll be the swinging blue jeans hippie hippie shake. I've called it that because it's just the best known song.
Catchy.
But yeah, 2 weeks. I've been working on it on and off. Well, for a couple of years, but more actively, next last 2 or 3 months. But it's at the proofreading stage now. I'm just doing some adjusting, and putting some extra photos in or whatever. So it's almost out, yeah. And I'll make sure you get a copy.
Okay. Do we have a picture of the cover?
Uh, Only on my computer, unfortunately. No, I haven't got it,
I can't wait
but
to
it's a
see
great
that.
cover.
Here's an obscure song by the Swingin' Blue Jeans, "Get Rid of Her," previously unreleased in the UK. Remember that song?
Which song?
Get Rid of Her.
Oh, Get Rid of Her. Yeah. Is it a 3 Degrees song or someone like that?
Yeah.
It's an early girl group song. Yeah, it's a great record. Get Rid of Her. Yeah, it wasn't released at the time.
Green,
Yeah. That's a good one.
Greenfield
Yeah.
Miller were the authors of the song. So yeah, I just thought
Right.
it was
Yeah.
one of those obscure songs that, that were they wasn't released in England. I didn't know if you were really aware of it. So
Oh yeah. I like the Hollies thing. Yeah, I've gone through. Well, the Hollies one obviously was only up to 1968, but this is every song from their skiffle days, 1960, 1961, right up to a record that came out 2 or 3 months ago. So you know, it really does cover everything. So
some other ones that they did that a lot of our audience may not be aware of was "Hey Mrs. Housewife," "Sandfly," "Big City," "Summer Comes Sunday." Those are all unusual songs,
yeah,
good ones,
hey,
but
Miss, hey Mrs. Housewife, that was written by Tony Hazard, who also wrote. He wrote "Listen to Me" for the Hollies. That some big hits for the Bee Gees, the Tremolos, people like that. And he actually offered apparently Mrs. Hey Mrs. Housewife to the Hollies for their final session with Graham Nash, and apparently Alan Clark's wife didn't like it, so yeah, she didn't like the lyrics, so that's the reason they didn't do it. And then he gave it to the Swinging Blue Jeans, and then instead he did "Listen to Me," which was their final single with Graham Nash, written by the same guy, Tony Hazard. Yeah, good song.
it is a good song. When was the last recording session that the Swing and Blue Jeans did in their heyday? I mean, was there a date that their last stuff?
Well, it's hard to define their heyday. I mean, the original lineup, Ralph Ellis, the lead guitarist and done some lead vocals, a good guy. He's still around. Yeah, a great guy, really. And but he left in around about February 1966, and instead of going into other bands, he actually didn't open his guitar case again. So he said for 26 years, and he worked in insurance in Liverpool. He just got a normal office job, and he became a manager there and did very well. and that was the end of the classic era. But the guy they got in was Terry Sylvester to replace him for the next 2 or 3 years, who was in a band called the Escorts, and they made some really good records, but they wasn't hits anymore. And so, their last big hit it was uh, Dionne Warwick's song "Don't Make Me Over." That was a hit in this country, a great version, fantastic version. But that was the last single with the original four, the hit-making four. And then after that, gradually, some of them drifted away, and up until to a few years ago, the lead singer, Ray Ennis, he was he was still leading the group, yeah, and but with other members, one of them died, the other two left, so yeah.
Sounds like a fascinating book. I love the way you lay the book out. You lay it out in a way where people could, gather, well, this is the beginning, these are the songs, and it evolved into this, to this. So it's real easy to follow.
Thank you, thank you. And because I've been in touch with these musicians, they've been digging through their old boxes and things, photos that they haven't seen themselves for 60 odd years. And I mean, photos from their skiffle days down the cavern that people had never seen, and they're going to be in this book. Yeah, they're absolutely amazing pictures. They really are.
What one or two things did you uncover in all your research on the Swing of Blue Jeans that blew you away?
I don't think I realised how popular they were before they had the hits. I knew, that they were quite popular, but I didn't realise until recently they played the Cavern more times than any other band, and the fact that they gave the Beatles one of their big breaks, and also Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Kramer, people like that. They were all had their first big breaks at the Cavern, really, as guests of the Blue Jeans. They were that big. They were the biggest group for a while before they were famous, even in Liverpool. So
Yeah, it's amazing. The Cavern Club. Now, I'm sure you've been there before.
I have the New Cavern Club. Yeah, I've been there. 3 or 4 times. Yeah, yeah. You ever been?
No, I've never been to the UK, and I plan on coming over
Yeah,
there
yeah.
to
Oh,
check it out.
it's well worth going to. Yeah, it's a great atmosphere, very atmospheric. Yeah.
Well, it looked like a place, though, from all the pictures I've seen, a tough place to play because it's so confined,
Yeah.
and people are on top of you, and you're playing for hours. That must have been a grind.
Yeah, and as you probably know, this isn't the original Cavern Club. That was demolished, and the
Right.
Cavern Club now is sort of half in the same location, but that didn't open, I think, to '84 or something like that. But apparently, the earlier one as well, it had very poor ventilation and very bad sewage system. So apparently, it absolutely stunk. Remember Ringo Starr saying like that. They have all these romantic images, but he said, it was a smelly, it was a horrible place, really. But,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when you're playing. I guess that would be a problem to have to endure that for the entire evening.
Well, yes, yes, yes.
Peter Chexfield, our special guest. Peter, we've talked about two fantastic books, The Hollies and The Swing of Blue Jeans. Let's let the audience know where they can get your books. Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, well, from Amazon, the biggest bookshop in the world. But if they can't get it there, just email me. Just look up my name, Peter Chexfield, and you'll find the website. It's easy, peterchexfield.com. And my email address is at the top. Just email me, and I'm sure I can help you.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. It's been a pleasure.